The new OEMs have dropped and I have been able to shave my lap times down significantly. And I mean lap times that were already in the top 20 laps of NA MXGP down to like a top 5, if not top 3 in some cases. In this video, I would like to share with you 5 things I have done to help do that. Let's talk about turning, and specifically what I did to my riding style to help with turning in tighter turns, and also to help avoid oversteer, which is something I think a lot of people struggle with. First off, I think the biggest tip I can give you in corners is to use a lot more rider input, and I mean a lot. This means leaning back going into the corner to stabilize the back, leaning forward in the corner to put some weight on the front tire to help get the bike to rotate. This also means if you weight the outside peg, or in the game people call it counter lean, you are able to turn a lot tighter, especially when you're locked into the rut. Being locked into the rut is actually a whole nother topic that I'll cover here in a bit, but yeah, these bikes do require you to shift your rider weight around a lot to go fast. Also, I've seen some people say they get a little bit of front end wobble going up hills, or that the slow physics are even worse than before. Personally, I have no idea where we're coming up with this, but I will say leaning forward when going up hills or when starting out does make the bike feel a lot more stable, because it just puts more weight on the front end, gets a little bit more traction, kind of like real life, you know what I mean? In all honesty, I think you can actually do the majority of your steering with the right stick now instead of the left stick, assuming you have your right stick set up for rider lean, left stick for steering. When I turn in tight corners and I predominantly use my left stick for steering, I oversteer a lot, but when I focus on my rider lean, I'm able to be significantly more precise when I'm turning than I could on any other bike I've ever ridden in the game. Next up, I'd like to dive into the suspension of the bikes a little bit, because I do see a ton of people already asking me for setups. What I have found is that generally the front ends of these OEMs are really soft, and they have a ton of rebound. This is just my opinion, and maybe some people think they are too stiff, but honestly what I think is happening is that they're so soft in the first stroke that it just blows through it, and then you combine that with a rebound and you get those weird deflections, or it feels bouncy and braking bumps. To combat that, I tend to go up 2 to 4 spring weights on the front forks, go up a few clicks on the bump, and down 4 or 5 clicks on the rebound. Now, I do want to say that this is not for every bike, and I have found that it doesn't work on every single bike, so you do have to play around with it. But for the majority of setups, this is kind of the default base that I have been using. Again, I'd like to reiterate that I don't think the stock setups are bad, and you can certainly munch on them, but I do think that for the majority of players, you guys will benefit from the changes that I just said. Now, it's no secret that these bikes turn a lot different than the previous OEMs, and a lot of people feel like they turn really, really wide. I think to an extent they do turn really, really wide, but it's certainly not as bad as when I first was getting used to them. But here are some geometry changes that I have used that can help you turn without giving up too much stability. Going down 1 click on the swing arm will give you significantly more agility in your turning without compromising too much of that straight line stability. We don't want the head shake, you know? Also, going up a few clicks on the fork height or down a few clicks on the fork offset can help, but I do think you can get yourself into some trouble there by going too drastic, and the bike will end up being like really nervous, which does make a lot of sense because that's what would happen in real life. My third tip is a simple one, but it's a really important one, and that is to be smooth. These bikes really reward being smooth on all fronts. That means smooth in your steering, smooth in your throttle, smooth in your braking. This means opening up your corners a bit more than you would have before. This means not braking nearly as hard in the braking bumps. Honestly, like I've said in previous videos, you should probably just get off your brakes as much as possible, or do some very light trail braking into the corners rather than being hard on the brakes before the corner. If you don't know, trail braking is being on the brake into the corner quite a bit, pretty much to the apex, and then you get on it. I don't think it needs to be that extreme, but if you do some braking through the braking bumps, and I mean very light, I'm talking 5 to 15%, and then you get off of them, it'll work really well. There's a specific section on MXGP of Italy where you come flying down this hill at like Mach 9, and at the bottom of the hill there's a 180 corner. I found that I was going over that berm a lot, where I was just getting completely yeeted in the braking bumps, and I could not figure it out. I sat there for a bit trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, and I started to let off way earlier and just not using the brakes at all. And actually I decided to, in the braking bumps, I would get back on the throttle, which again, that's only like 10 feet from the corner, so it felt a little weird but that forward momentum helped the suspension work a lot better, and it immediately solved my issue. For the corners, do not come into them head on and expect to be able to just whip a 180. You really have to open your corners up and have good corner entry, or at least these bikes rewarded a lot more than previous bikes. Standing later into the turns and sitting on the exit of turns can also help smooth out that power delivery so you don't lose your rear end. Plus, the longer you stand in the corner, the more, quote unquote suspension you'll have because of your legs, and so you'll be a little bit more stable, and then you can sit and get on the throttle and you'll go forward. Also, I found when you sit is a really good time to initiate the majority of your rider lean, because when you sit and you lean, it can help pivot the bike. To be honest, with these bikes, I had to take the slow is fast approach and really slow down my lap times to figure out what was going on and how they worked, and then slowly ramp it up from there. And now I can go literally like 5 to 10 seconds faster on almost every track than I could before on previous OEMs. In one of the OEM posts, they mentioned changing settings that could help with these bikes, and everyone kind of lost their minds. Trust me, I get it. People have been playing on the same settings for hundreds, if not thousands of hours, and they don't want to have to adapt their settings to a bike, and I think that that is fair. However, I do not think changing a couple settings here and there to help improve the experience is that big of a deal. I mean, shoot, I played 2,500 hours tapping my left stick in every corner, and I was able to relearn on literally 100% different settings in just a few weeks. I do not think that this is anywhere near that drastic, but I do have a setting for you that may help. I see a lot of people talking about changing direct lean to help stand the bike up faster, and while I think you could do that, personally I didn't find that to be super helpful, but I did change my rider's lean gain. I used to run 97.3%, but now I run 100%. That is actually only 2 clicks up, by the way, so it's not huge. I felt the biggest issue that people were going to struggle with, and that I struggled with, was actually getting the bike leaned over and into the corner, and then when I was in the corner, being able to lean it over in the rut and get it to turn. By upping your gain, this makes the initial movement of your left stick more drastic, so it's more sensitive, I guess. But anyway, I felt that this helped a lot, and since the bikes feel more quote-unquote lethargic in the initial input, the increase in gain really helps, or at least it helped me, and I think it'll probably help you too. And after 20 minutes, I was completely comfortable on these settings and on other bikes, like the factory bikes. I know that's important to people, so I think this is a good middle ground if you kind of want to change your settings, but you don't want to be a complete bot on the factory bikes. For me, this was a good change for both. My final tip for you is just to give these bikes time. And I don't just mean hop on with your friends and just be hee-hee-ha-haing in the Discord call, crashing 24/7 on Walnut, but actually spend some time learning and trying to understand your mistakes and the ins and outs of the bikes. I promise you will start to improve, and you will understand how to ride the bikes if you do this. You cannot expect to improve at something without dissecting the how and the why, so I would encourage you to do that. I do understand that there's a very large casual scene on the game that just wants to jump on and play, and they don't want to learn something new. And I guess that's fine. And luckily for us, the factory bikes just came out as well, and I think that they fill that hole perfectly. Those bikes are really intuitive, and they're easy to jump on and just go. But again, I would encourage you not to just write the OEMs off as bad because you aren't willing to learn them. I'll be honest, when I first jumped on them, I didn't like them, not at all. I actually had a message typed out to the OEM team. It was all angry, like, man, these bikes are so weird, what are we doing, blah, blah, blah. And I started to read, and I saw that other people were actually feeling the same way, but then about an hour later, they started to fall in love with the bikes. And I'm not gonna lie, that's exactly what happened to me. I started, okay, fine, I'll give them a second chance, and I started to ride them, and started to learn and pay attention to what was going on, and man, did I fall in love with them. And I think if you do something similar, you will have a similar outcome. Anyway, that's all for me, boys. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you want to see any of the gear that Doc uses, webcams, mics, controllers, stuff like that, click the links in the description. It actually helps me out a lot, more than you know. Much love, boys, and I'll see you in the next one.